Welcome to Experts Explain Trauma. Today we've got Bev Mitelman joining us to answer common questions that survivors have about attachment styles. And she'll also be giving us tips to help us on our healing journey. Okay, Bev, here's our question. What are some daily practices that can help rewire the brain for secure attachments? Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, this is such a good one. So there's a particular exercise that I like to do with my clients. It's called autosuggestion. So the idea here again is that we do have control over our thoughts, right? So when we're looking at a particular, let's say trigger. So let's say I'm carrying around from childhood a trigger, I am unlikable or I am unlovable, right? So what we tend to do as humans, we're very good at this, is we tend to look for evidence to validate what we already believe is true. And so, I could walk into a room and, for example, nobody turns around and says hello to me. Now, if I carry the wound, I am unlikable, what I'm likely going to do is throw a story into my head to validate that. You see, no one turns around to say hello to me because no one likes me.
Yep.
What I'm not going to do likely is go, people are having a really busy day today. Maybe it's just the wrong time to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or because there's could be how many different reasons?
Oh, hundreds.
Right? But what we do again is we tend to tell ourselves stories to validate what we already believe is true. And as humans, we are so good at storytelling.
Yeah, I'm really good.
Really good. And so if you actually bring your thoughts to your conscious awareness, you can see if you ask yourself truly the question, do I know that is true? Like, do I know 100% with 100% accuracy that the group didn't turn around to say hello to me because I am unlikable as a person?
That's the only reason why they didn't turn around.
Right. Do I know that to be true? I don't. Okay, so why am I feeding this thought process, right? So the exercise that we do, autosuggestion, we identify, let's say, the top wounds, the core wounds. Now, people carry more than one wound. Right? So for those that are anxiously attached or anxious preoccupied, the core wound is I will be abandoned. They also carry, I will be alone, I am unlikable, I am not good enough, I am bad. So not all of them, but those are sort of the typical ones. So what we do is we work on one core wound at a time, and we start to dispel the stories around that wound. Right? So we'll go back to I am unlikable or I am unlovable. What I would do with a client is I would say, okay, let's look in the different areas of your life. Let's say your career, let's say your family, let's say your romantic life, all of these different areas, your spiritual life. Let's find evidence to oppose that core belief that you are unlikable. Okay, well, let's see. This morning, let's say my son came into my room, gave me a hug, and said, "I love you, mommy." Okay, well, that would tell me, hold on a minute. That's not in support of I am unlikable. That's
Exactly.
I'm loved, right? So we would write that down, Let's say an old friend reached out and wanted to have lunch. Okay, well, I am liked by my friends. They're reaching out, they're making an effort to see me, right? So the problem is that the brain focuses on the negative.
Because they think you're in danger, right? It's looking for danger.
Right. And so again, the idea is to come up with a list of factual evidence to oppose that core wound, and then to introduce that, relive that, several times over the course of the next couple of weeks. Now, there's a particular cadence that we adopt. We will read back that list, and it'll usually be like 12 or 15 pieces of evidence, right? So it's a significant list. And I'll suggest to my clients that they read it back first thing in the morning and just before they go to bed. And you probably know why, because we're in a more of a trance-like state during those time periods.
Yeah, yeah.
We're more suggestible. So what we're doing is we're trying to build new neural pathways, connectivity in our mind for the way that we think. And
Hmm.
we can do this, right? So instead of thinking I am unlovable, I'm going to introduce all of this evidence into my mind. And when I think about these pieces of evidence or these things that have happened in my life, I'm going to do so with intent and emotion, right? Emotion and imagery is the language that our subconscious mind speaks.
Okay.
So our subconscious mind doesn't speak English like you and I are communicating. It
Right.
actually it communicates like in pictures, in image,
Yes. Yes.
right? And so what I'm trying to suggest to my clients to do is when you're reading off the list, for example, my son came in the morning and gave me a big hug, that you relive that moment, you feel the hug, you think about the smile on your son's face, and you allow your emotions to feel, right? Because the combination of the imagery, the emotions, and the repetition, because you're going to do this for weeks, that creates new neural pathways in our mind. So it's not any it's not any different from if you wanted to build muscle on your arms.
Right.
You would go to the gym on a certain schedule, you would do reps of 10 or you
Hmm.
do different sets over a period of time. You're not going to get strong in one day.
Right. Right.
The brain is the same. We can train it over a period of time to think in a new way. Just like we can build muscle, we can also build new neural pathways, which over time, if we're now using the new neural pathways, the I am lovable, let's say, the old one atrophies, it dies off. And so, this is, most people don't know that we actually can do this with our mind, just like we can do this with other parts of our physical body.
That was a great example because that's exactly what I went through. And that's exactly, and nobody taught me, like, I wish I would have had that exercise a long time ago. I did that exercise, but it took a lot longer because I didn't know to be so intentional. But I know what it felt like when I had the belief that no one loved me is I didn't see anything other than the evidence. That is all I saw. I didn't even know to look for the other evidence. And
Right.
it's been so liberating
Hmm.
using that exercise. It really, honest to goodness, works. And that because that belief was so embedded in me at such a young age and part of me that it still wants to pop up. But that's exactly what I do. I go, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. You don't have any friends that love you? Okay. And I start going down the list of my friends
Yeah.
and the evidence that they do love me. It is so liberating, and that I'm not lovable goes away. You're right. It
Yeah.
doesn't have the strength at all that it used to have. It wants to pop up every once in a while, but then I just shut it down.
Right. And you share so beautifully with such candor. I can tell you that many of my clients, when we go through this exercise, have a really hard time, as you're describing, finding the positive, finding
Yeah.
the evidence. Their mind has been conditioned and trained to look for the negative. So when I say, let's find evidence that you are loved, a lot of times it's like, I'm sorry, Bev, I can't think of anything.
Oh, truly. You really honestly cannot see it. All you see is the things of why they don't like you.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
filters. It's like these filters on your eyes. Yeah. And that's all you see.
That's all you see. And so sometimes that's just sort of the biggest hurdle as we start, we just start small. Like, sometimes I'll start even with like a pet. Well, I can see your cat in the background. That cat really loves you, wants to snuggle with you. Like, because for some people, really, if it's embedded, like you've talked about, their perception is filtered by this idea. So, yeah, breaking that down can be done, but it takes time.
It does. It's a process. It definitely was a process. And I think that if you're more intentional, like with what you're describing as an exercise, it can go much faster than it did for me, because I wasn't consistent with it. But I think it's a great idea to start small and just look for the little things. And it was funny when you said a pet. I was going to say, yeah, because pets give us such unconditional love, especially cats, because they're kind of, particular, so if your cat loves you, you're in good. And so start small and start purposely looking for different things. I mean, that's kind of what you have to do. You have to look at the situation and go, wait, I'm not going to look for the negative in this. I'm going to look for something positive in this situation. And that kind of is like the little icebreaker for your brain, it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It creates just a little crack in the code, right? Like, oh, wait a minute. For a lot of people, and myself too, I had a moment where I was like, I can actually question my thinking. Like, we take our thinking for granted to some regard that, well, this must be the truth, right? Right, because we've convinced ourselves that we absolutely are accurate in our assessment of any and all situations.
I'm always right. I'm always right.
Lisa, when you think you're right, like me too, it's like, no, I'm right. Fortitude, right?
Yes.
But it takes a little bit of humility to realize, wait a minute, maybe I'm not right. And I can think differently, and I can start to question my own thinking. Where did that come from? I'll tell you something. I inherited a fear of cats from, well, not anymore, but I did inherit as a young girl a fear of cats from my mother. She was petrified of cats. I've never seen anything like this. If she saw a cat, she would run across the street into oncoming traffic to avoid a cat.
Ooh.
She was petrified, but like in a very exaggerated way. And so I learned that cats are bad and be afraid of them. And as I grew older, I remember visiting like one of the local animal shelters, and I like to visit with the dogs. And there was a cat in a cage. And my initial reaction was, right? Because I'm afraid of cats. But then the cat stuck his little paw out, and I started to play with cats, and I had a moment where I said, am I really afraid of cats, or I just think I'm afraid of cats?
Oh.
And they took so then I said to the lady, can I hold the cat? And it was in that moment I went, oh my God, I'm not actually afraid of cats. This cat doesn't frighten me at all. I think I'm afraid of cats. And I've totally convinced myself, because that's what I believed I was supposed to think.
You were taught to be afraid of cats for no reason. And that's the thing, is we are allowed to question our mind. We're allowed to question what we're thinking, and we're allowed to question everything. And that is new for me. That's new over like the last 5 to 10 years. And it's a little unnerving. It's a little unnerving because you're like, why did I spend all those years believing that when evidence shows me otherwise?
Yeah. And it can be destabilizing too, right? Because then you start questioning a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Like your entire belief system. Well, why do I think this is right and this is wrong? And so it's getting reacquainted with yourself, right?
Right. Getting to know yourself. And that's the discovery I've been on since 2016, is discovering who I am and what I like, what I don't like, not what everybody else has told me. So I've done a lot of deconstructing and reconstructing.
Yes, and is it not so worth it?
Oh, it is. I'm telling you, it is. It's there's a difficult time in it for sure, but it is so liberating. And then there's that weird guilt of, well, gosh, I was supposed to think this way and now I don't, and I was raised this way. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. So I hear that a lot. I was raised this way, which really just means that your beliefs were passed on, in some cases imposed by your parents.
Right.
That doesn't mean that that's actually what you, as a critical thinking adult, truly believe.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Oh, this is so good. If this question resonates with you, or you have a question for our experts, let us know in the comments, and make sure to follow so you can get more insights on trauma healing.